Okay, so we've got a decoding error, but do we have the account? Let's go ahead and refresh here. And we do. Fantastic. And so that should keep the text roughly in the right spot. So if we're the author, we're going to be on the right side. If we're not the author, it's going to be on the left side. Oh, I missed a step. So we've written all this nice code, but we haven't tied it into the main app. And it's kind of something you'll encounter all the time. So in the future, it will affect all paddings in the app. So I don't really specify how many pixels. I have a general aversion to specifying pixels. I like to stick with the defaults. And I'm going to break my rule here and add a corner radius of 14 pixels. And the account view wants an account view model. Good news, we have one. So we kind of changed history in this case. We are going to be building a chat app with Firebase and SwiftUI. This could be something you include in your existing project to speak with a chatbot. You could use this as a foundation to make an app that connects people. I use this pattern to develop the APZ8 app. It helps people achieve their objectives. You can check it out through the link in the description. Let's start by showing the desired result first, so you can decide if this is worth watching. The desired result of this chat app tutorial is to have seamless accounts in Firestore, requiring no user intervention, with anonymous authentication, authorization via Firestore rules, and we also want to be able to receive messages in SwiftUI from Firestore. So for example, here we are in Firestore, we're adding a document to the message collection. We can say, hey, this is from Firestore, and we will send this. And look, you can see the message appears in the app. We want to be able to send messages to Firestore from SwiftUI. So you can see currently we have 3 messages. If we send a message saying, hey, this is from Swift, press send, and we should see, hey, this is from Swift appear in our collection. We want to develop everything with modern techniques. So those being, we want the app to be serverless. So there's no server, containers, there's no systems or single points of failure. We want it to be scalable. So Cloud Firestore is scalable up to some crazy usage levels. And we also want it to be secure. So we're making everything with the best practices delivered by Apple and Google. And we're doing nothing fancy or special that should put us at risk. This chat app tutorial will be structured into a couple of sections. The first section will be the design. We'll cover the Swift view hierarchy, as well as the Firestore document hierarchy. Next, we will cover the assumptions. Those will be the Xcode setup and the Firebase setup that we assume that you have already before beginning this tutorial. After that, we'll cover the authentication. So we will be trying to retrieve the account ID from Firebase. After that, we will do authorization. We'll create the account view model and develop a Firestore rule. After that, we will create the model, and that will be specifically the message view model, which will retrieve our messages. After that, we'll create the views. So that will be the account view and the message view, showing the data to the user within the SwiftUI app on their iPhone. And finally, we will have a quick conclusion. So let's go over the design of this chat app. So first, if we were to look at the app from the Swift view hierarchy perspective, at the top level, we would have the chat app. So at the top level, there's the chat app view. The chat app view has an account view model, and that represents the data of the account. The chat app creates an account view within it, and this account view holds a message view model, which represents the messages within this account. For every message in the message view model, the account view will create a message view. And when the user of the app creates a new message, this message will be sent from the account view to the message view model. That message view model will send it to Firebase. Firebase will then add it to the collection, and the listener within the message view model will bring back the message to the account view and back into a new message. So that's the Swift side. From the Firebase perspective, we have collections and we have documents. So in Firebase, you have collections, which have a list of documents, and it's more of a map because each one is indexed by an ID. And then within each document, you can have a collection. So it kind of goes collection, document, and so forth. In this case, we only have two real levels. So we have the account at the top level, and our app will have many accounts, hopefully. And each account has a collection of messages. So the messages at the bottom level are a document, and they have three parameters: text, time, and author. The types of each are string, timestamp, and then Boolean. And the author represents if this account is the author or if some other agent is the author. So you can address a message within the structure like the following. So you can have slash, which is the root, and then you can go into the account collection, and then you have the account ID, and then you can go into the message collection, and then you can go into the message ID. And so in Swift, it would look like this. So you can kind of read that out as you like. The nice thing about this is that within this hierarchy, you can section off each account by simply providing a rule which allows the account to access only its account document and all documents within that account document or beneath it. And so that allows us to split the overall Firebase database into each of the accounts, and it allows people to access their data, but not other people's data. We are going to make a couple assumptions. First, on the Firebase side, if you navigate to the console.firebase.google.com, we're going to assume that you've created a project. In this case, I've created the project chat. We're going to assume that you have created a database, and in here, I've created a Cloud Firestore database. We are going to assume that you have linked Firebase to your iOS project. On the Xcode side, we're going to assume that you have created an Xcode project. We are going to assume that you have added Firebase to your pod file and installed all of these dependencies. We're going to assume that you have installed the plist file, which you get from the Cloud Firestore connection. Finally, there is a special quirk, at least in 2024, where user script sandboxing must be disabled for Firebase to run. Now, if you have all of these set up, you should be able to run a basic project and confirm that it compiles and runs. Now that all of our assumptions are out of the way, we can begin with authentication. Authentication is the act of proving an assertion, such as the identity of a computer system user. So in our case, authentication means specifying a unique ID which represents the user and device. So first step, what we're going to do is we're going to add authentication to the app in Firebase. So we can go to the Firebase project, go to authentication, and what we're going to do is we're going to add a sign-up method. In this case, we're going to use anonymous, but you could choose any of these. The only thing is that you're going to have to tie in the user interface. In this case, it will be anonymous, and it can be run in the backend. So we're going to go ahead and enable it and hit save. And so now we have enabled anonymous authentication for our app. In the app, what we're going to want to do is add an account to the app. So right here in our app, what we're going to do is we're going to say at state object where account view model is equal to account view model. Okay, so we have not defined account view model yet, and so it will return an error. Now what we can do is we can create this file, so a new file, Swift file. We're going to call it account view model. Okay, so we hit create. Excellent. So now within this account view model, what we're going to need is we're going to have to import Firebase Firestore, which will give us the Firestore functions. And we're going to do Firebase auth, and that will give us the authorization. So now let's define our class account view model. We're going to make it an observable object so that we can update its state and have the user interface react to it. And for now, we're just going to define an initializer. And so we're going to say auth, which is the Firebase auth.auth dot sign in anonymously. Quite difficult to say. We're going to use Swift's closures, which is kind of cool. And this will give us an auth result and an error. And so here we're going to say guard let auth user equal auth result question mark. This is optional dot user else. So if we don't get a user, what are we going to do? We're going to print. Now, if you're working in a larger project, you probably don't want a better error handling this. But for just starting off, a print is kind of all what you can do. There was an error collecting the Firebase user. Excellent. And we're going to return so that we don't continue. And so now, if the guard has not been executed, we know that we have a user. So we're going to say user.uid. So we're going to print the user UID. Actually, we're going to say user ID is, okay, perfect. So now let's see if this works. So we're going to hit run, and it thinks we have an exception, but it is wrong. Fantastic. So we have a user ID. In my case, it's K6A, blah, blah, blah. And so this user ID represents this device, this simulation device, and we can use this to identify it for the database going forward. Now that we've handled authentication and we have the user ID, which is generated from Firestore, you want to move on to authorization. So authorization is kind of like the gate that prevents users from accessing other users' data, and it authorizes users to access just their data. And to do this, we're going to first create the concept of an account in our SwiftUI project. So first, we're going to make a struct, and we're going to call it account. And we're going to make it codable, which says to Swift that this account can be encoded and decoded. Specifically, it can be turned into a Firestore document and back out. And so that's this will be mirrored into Firestore. So this account for now will just have a document ID. And it will be optional. Okay, So now that we have the concept of an account, and the account will just be like an empty document effectively, we're going to add the account to the account view model. So we're going to do published var account, and we're going to do published var ref reference. So the account will be a struct, an optional struct, so it will start off not being initialized. And the ref will be a reference to the account document. So we kind of have the data for the account and then a reference to the data in Firestore. Okay, so let's go ahead and use the auth user UID to find the account. So first, let's create a handle for the DB. So we'll say let DB equals Firestore dot Firestore. So that's the database, and then we're going to do let docref equal db dot collection, and the collection name will be account, and the document in that will have the key auth user dot UID. Okay, fantastic. And now we're going to do self.ref equals docref. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to want to retrieve the account. So we're going to say docref.getDocument. So the reference you can think of as kind of like a pointer to the document, but we want the actual content of the document. So we want to say get document as account.self. So this will return a result. And this result will be one of two things. So we're going to switch on it. It will be a case.success. And that will give us a new account. So you can see the syntax isn't too bad, it's kind of clean. And so we're gonna, if we have a new account, we're gonna say self.account equals new account. Pretty simple. And then if we don't have, if it was not successful, case.failure, what are we gonna do? We're going to say let error. So we have an error and we're gonna print the error. And we're also going to self.account equals account. So if we have an error, what we want to do is we want to create an account. So if there's an error, there's a chance that the issue is that there's no account already. So what we're going to do is we're going to say self.account is account. So it's initializing the account. And then we're going to say, we're going to try to make it. So try doc ref dot set data from self.account. So we're trying to create the document in Firestore. And now if that doesn't work, we're going to catch the error and we're going to print it. Okay, so what we've done here is we've created the concept of an account for Firestore, and then we're trying to retrieve the account, and it looks like we have an error. Switch, oh, oops, results. We didn't specify what we were switching on. Okay, great. So on initialization, we're going to try to get the account. Now let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. Oh no, there was an error. Write stream error, permission denied, missing or insufficient permissions. Write account failed, missing or insufficient permissions. Missing or insufficient permissions. What could that be? Oh, that's because we created our database in a production setting, and that the production setting means block everything. So in Firebase, there is this concept called rules. So you can see in Firebase, so you've got your project overview, you go to your database, then you can go to rules, and in the rules, you can see it's kind of specified with a language here. And so what I'm going to use is just the basic rule that is recommended by Firebase. Something fancy because I find when I do things fancy, I have a much higher probability of retrieving errors. So in this case, all we're going to do is we're going to extend this, and we're going to say match account. So you can see here, Service Cloud Firestore, match database documents. So we're saying within the database, we're going to match account /account ID / and then any document within that. So any collection or document within that. So this says match the account collection, the account ID document, and then anything kind of below that in the tree. So we're going to allow read, write, and not if false, because that means never. What we're going to do is we're going to do request.auth doesn't equal none. So that means if the authorization for the request exists. And then what we're also going to do is we're going to say if request.auth.uid, so the UID of the authorized request is equal to account ID. So what this does is it says within the collection account with the document ID, account ID, anything underneath it, we're going to allow read and write if the request authorization exists and if the request authorization user ID is equal to this account ID in here. So we're allowing accounts to access their document and all documents and collections below it. So we're going to go ahead and publish this. And it says it can take up to a minute to propagate. So we'll slowly kick it off. And if we're successful, what we should see once this begins is that we get a new account within our database. So let's see if this works. So we're starting the application. User ID is this, description, found null instead of. Okay, so we've got a decoding error, but do we have the account? Let's go ahead and refresh here. And we do. Fantastic. So now what we have done is we've added authorization and allowed the user to create their account document. And from within this account document, we can store all the data for this account. And this user will have access to it, and its state will be saved in Firebase. Next, we're going to create the message view model. And what the message view model is going to do is it's going to represent the data flow for all of our messages. So I'm going to create a message view model. So message view model, we'll hit create. And in this message view model, we're going to import Firebase, Firestore, just kind of the core of how we're moving data in our app. We're going to create a struct called message. So this is what is going to represent the state of messages in our app. And so a message will be codable, which allows it to encode and decode from JSON, and it will be identifiable, which allows it to be identified within a list, and that's handy if we're going to be using a for each. And next, what we're going to do is we're going to create a property called document ID and give it the string just like the account. We're going to give it a time. So this is when it was created. We're going to give it some text. So this is the text of the message. And finally, we're going to give it an author property, which will represent whether or not this user is the author of the message. So whether or not it shows up on the left or the right hand side of the chat. So now that we have the struct defined, we can define the actual view model itself. So we're going to do class message view model, and it is an observable object, just like our account. And so what the observable object does is it allows the view to bind to the view model. And as the view model changes its value of what messages or what messages have in them, the view will be bound and automatically update. So within the message view model, we're going to have a publish property, which is the messages. And that is of type array of message. And when we initialize, we're going to make it empty. Then we're also going to have a property, which is the listener. We're going to get to what that is later on, but pretty much what it is it's going to listen for new messages, and we need to keep it around because if it gets deallocated, we may not get the updates that we're looking for. So next we're going to define a method for this view model, which is going to get messages. So we can use the account ref that we created before. So if you remember when we created our account view model, we have an account ref in it. So we can do document reference. So we're going to get the messages for this account, and we're going to use the account ref to find within the tree in Firestore. So next we're going to define the listener. So self.listener is equal to account ref dot collection. So we're going from the account to the collection, and the collection is going to be called message. And then we're going to order the results by the time so that it's sorted chronologically. And then we're going to add a snapshot listener. And this snapshot listener will render a query snapshot, and also a error. Okay, so that was quite a lot, but pretty much what we're doing in this get messages is we're defining a listener and we're saving it to the view model. And this listener will listen for any new documents in the message collection. And when it gets an updated snapshot of what this collection looks like, what we're going to do is we're going to do self.messages. So we're going to update this self.messages with query snapshot dot documents dot compact map. And what compact map does is it returns all values that are not null. So if we're kind of like optionally decoding each one of these messages, so if something goes wrong, it doesn't break all of the other messages. So if one message fails to deserialize, then all the other messages will still show up, which is kind of nice. So we're going to do try message dot data as message dot self. So that what that does is it says, okay, we've got the query snapshot of all the messages. We're going to go to all of its documents, and then we're going to run through each document. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to decode it as a message. And then this may not return anything, this compact map. So if it does return nothing, then we're just going to return an empty list. Okay, so that's going to get our messages, and it's also going to update continuously. So if in Firestore a new message is added, our user interface will immediately update, which is really cool. And it's not too many lines to get this really powerful functionality. So next, we're going to define a new message method so that the account or the person using the app can add a new message to the collection. So we're to make a new message, you're going to need an account reference. So document reference. And you're also going to need the text for the message that you're adding. And what we're going to do in here is we're going to say account ref dot collection, and that collection is message. And then we're going to add a document to this collection. And the data is going to be our new message. So it's going to have the text, which is the text. It's going to have the author, which is always going to be true because the user of the app is always the author of the message. And finally, the time we're going to set as timestamp of date and a new date. So that's pretty much just sets the current time. And yeah, it's pretty handy. So that is our message view model. And with this, we can now build the views around it, and we can get the messages, and we can create a new message, and we constantly are publishing the updated state of all of our messages for this account. Now that we have all the data side handled, we can move on to the more fun stuff, which is the views, things that we can see. So the first view we're going to create is the account view. So we'll create it through Swift, account view. Sweet. So this account view, we're going to need to import Swift, SwiftUI. We're going to make a struct, which is of type account view. It extends view, or sorry, it doesn't extend view, it inherits from view. Every view needs to have a body. Let's get that out of the way. And they don't have something in them. So there you go. Give it a VStack. And we will make it alignment dot center. So that centers all the content that we're going to be filling it in with. So in this account view, we're going to have an observed object. So we're going to observe the account view model. So the account view model that we created before, we're going to accept it as a parameter and observe any changes that happen to it. So it's of type account view model. We're also going to have a state object. So the difference between observed object and state object, observed object is, hey, I'm accepting this parameter and I'm going to observe this object that I don't really own. I didn't instantiate. And state object is, oh, I want an object for myself. So this is state object message view model that we just created. And we'll make one right here. So yeah, so the difference is that we're kind of making the message view model right here. Next, we're going to add a state new message. So when we want to send a new message, and we will make it of type string and set it to nothing. Taking me to message. Oh, and you can see there's a bit of an error here, so we need to set it like equals, of course. So, okay, we now have kind of the state of this view. It's going to have an account view model. It's going to have a message view model. It's going to have a new message text. So at the top of our account view, let's add a nice, so the account view is kind of like once you've loaded into the app and you are authenticated. So we're going to do chat app tutorial. And we're going to set the font to this of title. So this will be at the top, and because we have the alignment, it'll be at the center. Next, we're going to do a little bit of conditional rendering. So we're going to say if let count ref equals count view model dot ref. So if we have an account reference, because it's not guaranteed, it's optional, we're going to create a scroll view. And what a scroll view is, it's kind of like a VStack, but you can scroll through it, which is really handy for a chat, just like your messages app. On this scroll view, we're going to give it the default scroll anchor of dot bottom, which will make it so that it scrolls to the bottom and it always shows the latest messages. In this scroll view, we're going to do a for each, and this is the kind of the core of the app, is that we're going to do a for each of the message view model dot messages. So if you're really to see what the heart of this app is, it's that we're iterating through each one of these messages, and we're going to create a message view for each of the messages. And when we iterate through each of these messages, we are going to get a message, and we are going to pass the message to the message view, which we have not defined yet. All right. Now, when this scroll view appears, we want to load the messages. So it's as simple as dot appear, and then we're going to do message view model dot get messages, and our account ref we have it right here. So this this whole section here won't appear until we have an account ref, and when it does, this will appear, or the scroll view will appear, which will call this on appear, and it will call get messages. And when get messages is called, it's going to populate message view.messages, which is here. So when this is called, it's going to change this. And when this changes, we're going to get messages, and we're going to create message views on each one of the messages. So that's kind of how the data is going to flow. And then finally, after this, we are going to, one second here, after this, we are going to allow you to create a new message. So within here, we are going to say text field. So this is what allows us to create a new message. And so we're going to say message. This is like a little text field at the bottom. We'll do text. And the text in here is our new message text. The axis, we're going to set to vertical. And then what this will do is, as you kind of type into it, it's going to continue vertically. And then on submit, so when you submit the text field, what we're going to do is we're going to say message view model dot new message, and the account reference is going to be our account view model. Actually, sorry, account reference is going to be account reference, and our text is going to be our new message text. So once we create a new message, we want to clear the new message text. So that is as simple as new message text dot remove all. And then finally, just for looks, we're going to add a bit of padding to this whole thing. And I like to just set padding as default. So if I change it later, I'm just saying padding twice. And if I change the padding in the future, it will affect all paddings in the app. So I don't really specify how many pixels. I have a general aversion to specifying pixels. I like to stick with the defaults. Okay, so this is our account view, and it's not going to render yet because message view is not defined. So let's start on the message view. So to do that, we're going to create one more file, and we are going to call it message view. And so within our message view, we are going to import SwiftUI. We are going to make a struct, which is message view, and it inherits from view. And so the message view is going to take a parameter. So when you create it, you pass it a message, right? So this is the data being passed to the view. And now we can use this data. So we can say var body some view. And so now we can create an H stack. So this is what we really want, is like a little bubble for each message. And so our message has, and if we go back to here, we can see our message has a time, a text, and an anchor, and an ID, but we're not really going to use ID much. So in our message view, we're going to create a horizontal stack, and we want to move it, we want to move the message to the left or to the right, depending on what if it's an author or not. And so one of the simplest ways to do this is just to add a spacer, whether or not it's the author. So we can do something like if message dot author, excuse me, and spacer. So if we are the author of this message, then we're going to shift everything to the right. And so we're going to have the text, which is the message.text. And let's go ahead and add some padding, and we can add a little bit of styling here. It's not super necessary, but it's kind of nice. So here's a little bit of fun styling, and that's going to be a background. And the background is going to have a linear gradient. And this gradient will will have colors, and it will be dot teal and dot mint. And then we are going to give it a start point, and it's a unit point, and its x will be 0, y will be 1, and we will give it an end point, and that will be x is 1 and y is 0. So that kind of goes diagonally across the bubble. And I guess we're missing a bracket there. So we have background, which is a linear gradient, and we want to give it a corner radius. And I'm going to break my rule here and add a corner radius of 14 pixels. And we're going to give the text a foreground color of white. And then finally, if the message is not, if we are not the author of the message, we are going to add a spacer to the other side. And so that should keep the text roughly in the right spot. So if we're the author, we're going to be on the right side. If we're not the author, it's going to be on the left side. Okay. So next, what we can do is we can kind of test it. So let's start it up. So what this should do is it should render our account view. We don't have any messages in the database right now. You can see right here, this is our account. We have no message. We only have a message collection. So there's nothing there, but it should still load up. We'll see if that's true. Oh, I missed a step. So we've written all this nice code, but we haven't tied it into the main app. And it's kind of something you'll encounter all the time. So Here we need to tie it into the main app. And so we're going to say account view, and the account view wants an account view model. Good news, we have one. So we're going to give it the account view model. Okay. So the problem there was that we weren't even rendering the root account view. So we'll just start that again and see what happens. All right. So after correctly connecting the account view to the root, the main app, we have the page looking like this. Actually, I'll move it down a little bit. So to test it, let's send a message. So hello. It looks like it at least loads in the app, but let's check the data. So one of the things with this is you have the UI, but then you also have the database in the back. So here we have the account, we have the account ID, and we have a collection created, which is a great sign. And if we click on this collection created, we have a message, and this is the message ID that was created. And this message has the text, hello. And the author is true because it was us, and the time is now. So one of the cool things that we can do with this app now is we can test it by sending a message back from either the server or maybe another user. So let's create a new document, and we will give it the time field, which is type timestamp. That will be right now. And then we're going to add another one, which is author. And we're going to set that to false, so that as if it's not the user. And finally, we're going to set the text. And let's send the classic world. So when we hit save, we're going to want to watch the app. And if our event listeners, if our document listeners worked, we're going to see the message pop up. If our listeners don't work, we're not going to see a message, and we'll have to change something. Well, looks like it sent the world, so that's good. Now, one thing you'll notice is the order is incorrect, but that's kind of the nature that we set the timestamp to the beginning of the day. So we kind of changed history in this case. Today, we have made a chat app with Firebase and SwiftUI. We covered the design, authentication, authorization, models, and views. I hope you build an app with this that helps many people. Please ask any questions that you have in the comment section below. Try out the APZ8 app on the App Store to celebrate your work.